and Matt is going to show us how to take the rest of the raw materials and put everything together to turn it. Just puddle a little more than it did.
Exactly.
I was too
lower temperatures. So we're going to start working out with hard. Grinding wheels are more like sandpaper.
I've now ground down.
Great. The less alloys there are, the hotter it needs to be to melt. The more alloys there are, the less. So we're going to flux this up, as always. Too hot.
Cooled off that quickly.
Okay, now we're going to see if our bezel fits our stone. We're going to apply flux. And what flux does here and kind of pushes a brass sheet, and we're going to measure it out and just cut a little more than enough.
Just by being very slightly abrasive.
When it goes kind of dark, then clear.
Ooh, and the whole ring just...
You want to bend that brass as closely to the stone as possible, damaging the brass. So we add flux every time we do any soldering. To cut as close as we can to the bezel.
That, I think, makes us as powerful. Now I've got the stone ground. Having the flux...
Don't want to have happen is for the best.
I assume we want it flat.
Exactly. So we're going to need our little anvil and our rawhide hammer. We're going to be working with this redstone first so it lays flat. So that's perfect. Now it's flat. We're going to see the flux bubble, which is totally normal. And I'll come in, and then I want you to go circles around the outside. Flare quite yet. Right now you'll see it is brassy on the bottom half because we just grinded that. And if you watch closely, you're going to see that brass turn all black. Easy. So you guys can find us at
an infinity gauntlet, but rather than a...
The goal with this solder is to get it just hot enough for the
copper at this point.
Exactly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to grind away all of that red and
Is that flat enough?
Yep, that's perfect.
All right. Probably
bend that brass.
Press on top.
And we're going to wrap it around the stone as tightly as we can and figure out...
We've got our slow... pieces and sort of line.
We don't really worry about size as much. Now comes time to do the ring.
Definitely got some of the brass color showing up now that we've been grinding away.
Just to make it more flat.
Got it.
And when we're filing, we want to keep that at a 0.925 sterling silver. This is called a burnishing tool, and what we use this for is to... What you're going to see is once you reach that magic temperature, you're going to see that bar of...
Got more for you to see. That box up at the top will transport you directly to our last video, and you should go check that out. The box is brass,
and we also don't want it to...
metal polish under them at the moment.
Where it gets a lot more fun. What we are going to... is that it is solder that is mixed with different amounts of alloys. So, gauging what size it is, so we're going to be aiming for that size 5 right there. So begin wrapping your...
So I'm going to take this torch, I'm going to start kind of far away, let it...
The solder will have something to connect to. Check it, make sure that it really does hug it. And one thing, just to make it into a circle. We have hard, medium, and easy. And basically all that is, always check those solders, make sure exactly how long this...
Don't forget to ring that bell, and we'll see you in the next one.
.gemstudio on Instagram or thegemstudio.com.
Guys, that's not all we've got. Stone. What do we do?
Okay, so we always double check as it spins. Now what we're looking for now is if there's any light gaps. So it looks like that perfectly. And now we're going to use this thing called third arm, which is... But on the next solder, it's going to get all red again. Looks like it's perfect. So now what we want to do is we want to make sure... What we always do is we're going to use scissors just top of this. It's really warped, the setting a bit better. So first we're going to work with the lapidary machine. But it does... Some tweezers that are held up at this platform.
It's like reverse tweezers.
Exactly.
That's not really doing anything to my skin.
A lot faster than the sheet. It's less dense. There's less metal there. So that means that what you...
On there that I need, huh?
Yeah. So now... And eventually it's going to go clear. And so now we're going to be soldering these two pieces of metal. You have the brass. This is the pinky stone for Grant. We are going to be grinding the back down and make everything. There we go. Cut it like right here.
Probably still have a little more material. Awesome. Now, some of my fingernails may have some black.
I go under to create some springiness to it, and then I try and get them matched up.
Such a low grit.
That's right.
I believe. So,
the way we get the right size is we use a ring mandrel. It has black. When it comes out, brass is going to look kind of light red.
The bottom will show you what YouTube thinks you should be watching next. If you hit this button
closer, two ends match. Yeah.
And do I stop the heat or do I just back up so it's still?
I say back up.
Okay.
Those solder bits close to the edge. All right, now solder comes in 3 different. Getting the sheet hot, so I want you to aim right in the center.
We spent twice as long on that as I needed to.
Okay. Second, it's fine to touch.
It's thin.
Underneath that, you're gonna see a lot of really pretty brass color. So we're gonna move in a little closer, and we're gonna see kind of bubble. So this is exactly what you want to see.
Sweet.
Now comes the next step, and we're gonna drop this in a crock pot full of acid. Okay, so we pulled them out of the crock pot.
That looks like a ring.
Okay, so we're pretty hot, so we're gonna focus on
In the middle, you'll be subscribed to our channel so you never miss out on a video.
different numbers on here. For silver band around the
Cut and ready to go, and for the most part, the bezel should do its job.
use flush cutters to cut just a little bit extra, and make sure you're cutting at 90 solder, just like melt into the potentially could end up thin brass sheet as our bezel.
Quite get them on all the fingers. I've just got them set up like this.
The solder would just ball up, and it will. The next step is going to be getting the sheet. And the sheet should fit snug. Is as it heats up, it cleans the surface. My fingernail can't catch any of these edges, and we're not worried about color.
Quick.
And that's it. Over the top of the stone like that, all the way around. Put your whole strength into it. We'll hold that in place right there.
Easy solder this time.
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
All right, go ahead and quench
Quench
it.
this.
And now you're gonna notice that there's a bit of a red hue across all of the brass.
Yeah, it looks more like copper. But
Clean, it usually pinches it off at the tip. So we're gonna use a file to file down those.
down pretty much all of the red surfaces that I can get to, and it's time to move on to the polishing.
And going to different parts of the brass. What it is, it's mixed with, I think, zinc and tin. And zinc and tin are metals.
And hold the stone in. All right, the stone is set. This was a pretty tight fit.
So that they're nice and secure, I kind of wiggle it a little bit. And
Next step.
okay, so now what we're gonna be doing is getting the bezel. So we're gonna be using this heat we need to make it melt. So this is between the ring band and this. And
It's not something that's like really wearing away at my fingers, which means the oxidized layer.
all the solder stick to the bezel, but have the sheet still cool hot. We do want the band to be hot as well, so it has some. It's great. Okay, so this is we'll do that for like 5 to 10 minutes, and then once it's gonna go and clean up a little bit, and then we'll polish it. Now that we have our stone in our bezel, the brass is all black,
Very discolored.
very discolored. So now we have this, and then we're actually gonna use a third arm to and sucking it out. And you are good. So put the flame down. Crack. And once it melts, that's when these ends are flat. When you cut metal, rarely does it ever cut.
Talk to you then.
Going looking pretty black. We're gonna use the lapidary machine one more time, and we're gonna use solder to melt and make that connection strong, but we do not want to get it.
Some of you may have seen a while back Grant's
Ring mandrel and try
them into rings.
a perfect angle so we're not filing. Sure that some of the softer the bezel onto the sheet. So that means
Wheel. This is a very, very
long because we don't want the solder overflowing. It's conductive. All right, now you're gonna watch that melt and have it never stick to the sheet.
set infinity rings.
Bubble out.
And so once it starts to puddle, what are we talking like half enough that it's just cool?
And medium melts a little bit lower.
Because this way we won't melt the first solder joint.
We cut from just a 26 gauge piece.
Thanks again to Matt here at the Gem Studio. Matt, where can people find out more about this place?
Over here, that haven't quite melted.
Solder has moved. Is that a problem?
No.
Here on the outside.
That looks great. So we have these fine.
Okay.
A little closer. And we're making sure that we're heating up this whole top surface.
Okay.
This brass, quench it in the water. There. So the first step is going to be making them what we call kissing.
This thing is grinding down the stone and it's really flattening it out.
Band. So the ring band is gonna be the part that goes away until the very, very end.
That's when we'll polish it.
We actually will. We do not want to shove our stone in there. It's tempting, but it will get stuck. So we can. Solder goes where it's hot, stone just perfectly. So now go ahead and use. So you want to get them right matched up. So what I usually do is I go over and
so we won't lose what we've already done. Right,
so go ahead and it's gonna hold these in place, and then
down on the back. What's the Thanos?
Powerful as Thanos.
And that's gonna be that. This all the way around the outside.
We've got our little band cut and pretty exactly sized around.
Is soldered down to the sheet. Yep, exactly.
Pretty easily.
Flux is gonna go backing that goes against your finger. Bezel to get hot, and then have. Now we have the ring band to the correct size. The more connection, the better for solder. These aren't going anywhere. So now,
which is currently closed together nicely. We don't lose any distance.
Is getting that sheet nice and
but it will still bond to the brass. And now, do we want to bend the bezel in over it just a little bit?
The brass sheet. So we're actually going to grind a flat spot across, put it in acid for a while, and that will help kind of soften it. Aim down and go in circles. So we're going to see. Cool. So now what we have
across the gap.
And just cut it of the brass, and tells the solder where to go.
It has very, very hard grinding, but it's.
So kind of go up and down on this end.
All right. Our ring is all cleaned, polished, and
All white and crusty, and then
half second, 3 seconds.
probably around a half second.
Okay, so like it'll go and just sort of, all right, that.
Doesn't melt that much with that whole crack. So now I'm gonna have you grab that and focusing on again really, really fast sandpaper that keeps wet, and we're gonna grind down the back.
It's interesting.
Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is what we want to see is a really good connection. You kind of place it in there, get an idea of how it's gonna look. But we don't actually shove it into the. Notice that
To do was make sort of to hold it better.
So
we're gonna make a few more, and what he really wanted.
right now you're gonna notice about this sheet is that it's kind of crazy looking.
It's a little warped.
Exactly. And very end, after it's all polished. So on this solder, we're going to go ahead and use medium.
Cooker full of acid, and then we just drop the ring in. How long do we leave it in there? Heat up, be moving in closer and closer, and the goal is to get the little piece of solder to melt. What is it I'm looking for? Guys, today we are here with my new friend Matt, who's going to be showing us some of the steps in how to make some bezels.
Around your finger, that's actually going to hold this, making it a bit flatter, so it's going to sit inside of
This. But they're looking pretty nice. We've got some great colors, and
bezel is going to get hotter, basically. Without flux,
flux on there also helps just keep that right where we put it. It's obviously not rolling off, because the flux is kind of a goo. Soldering bar, and we just laid it right.
we want to back up. We don't want to keep the heat on there too long.
Story on Instagram where he came and he made a ring here at this shop, and he thought it was so cool that we changed colors.
This is all oxidizing.
Or soft.
And big circles again. And then we're going to use an actual lapidary machine grinder to get right up against the edges.
Some very shiny brass. We've got 5 rings on a bracelet gauntlet. Just make a different ring for each finger. And so we've got a whole bunch of stone.
Melt into the crack. It will just end up overheating and to solder these ends together.
But there you go, the 5 rings, and these are not sized for my hands. I can't
Just right. So I'll have you work on that.
Cool.
We have our brass wire needs to be to hug. That's all right on the top half degree angle. Second, and brass is nice curved edges. If we get it too
We'll
hot,
lose the other 2 bonds.
exactly. So with this solder, we're going real dense.
Inside.
We like using a rawhide hammer when we work with metal because it does not do
Fine grit stuff that sticks to our wheel, and then it polishes the brass.
So we have something that we can attach the bezel to. And this will be the back solder, and then work our way down to easy.
We took our
Piece of brass, the bezel, and an important part about this step is we have here, is we have our brass, and then we have our silver solder that covers it. So what we're doing is we're heating the inside, and then going to the outside. Exactly right. The important part about this solder is that if you think about these here and you have the sheet here sewn in place, so we are going to be sizing this one to a 5.
Size.
Trying to get to that size 5. Once you kind of have the rough shape, go ahead. Let's go back and forth one more time and have that flow a tiny bit more. And once been underwater for even a second. Yeah, back up.
Cool.
And we're using butane torches.
Butane. 5, and that would be Grant's left pinky finger.
Brass is a bit more.
That's our flux starts bubbling up.
The actual bezel into the bezel. What we do is actually slide it down on the ring mandrel and use this rawhide hammer. And it's gonna lay right on there, like I said earlier. Perfect. Now.
No. 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 No.